welcome in. I hope you guys are having a good week so far. We're halfway through. I've got a really fun project for you guys that I hope will inspire you. This is a cool one where we're going to take some macrame techniques and we're going to apply them to a pre-made component. And I love this idea because it kind of opens up a whole world of possibilities to you when it comes to pre-made components. But of course, there's something to be said for when you make your own components, whether you're using, some German style wire, artistic wire, craft wire, what have you. But I think it kind of takes some pressure off of you, saves some time, and definitely kind of opens up what's possible when it comes to shapes, when it comes to using a pre-made component as your base for something. And so we're going to take a classic knot. This is not a square knot, but this is very, very similar to a square knot. This is actually two half hitch knots in two different directions. I'll show you when we get to that point. But it's taking a knot that is very simple once you get the hang of it, and then giving you the opportunity to apply this to literally any surface that you can think of. I've got a really cute little earring component that we're going to use as a necklace. It can be used as a pendant or used as earrings, but you literally could do this to anything. You could do this to a wooden ring. If you had some, old hoop earrings in your stash, you could cover them with this kind of knot, or any kind of macrame knot for that matter. So I really hope to inspire you today and to show you a really cool and versatile technique that you can use in a lot of different ways in your jewelry making. So let's get started. I'm going to turn you around and we're going to talk about the materials, and then we're going to jump right into it. All right, so for our materials for our project, the component that I'm using is a bead landing creations component. 4 of these come in a pack, so you can make 2 sets of earrings, or you can do 4 pendants. And the way that I have this one set up is really set up to be a pendant. This is the sample. This is exactly what we're going to be making. I think this would look really cool as a pendant on a really long necklace. But again, if you like this as an earring, you could just add an ear wire to it and make a mate for it, and you'd have a set of earrings, and you've got enough of these components left over to do a whole other set. So maybe 1 to wear and 1 to give, or 1 to wear and 1 to sell. All right, so that's the little components, and I'm going to set these to the side. You're going to need some B-Lon, and the B-Lon comes in 3 different colors in one pack. And this one is the gray. The gray comes with white and black as well. I'm using the gray. That's kind of a silvery gray. That's what I'm going to use as my cord for this. B-Lon is basically just nylon cording. It is a little grippy. It doesn't have a really thick coating on it, but it does have a little tackiness to it, which helps it to stick to itself. So when you make the knots, you know that those knots are really going to grip onto each other and stay. We are going to use a little bit of glue though, just as our backup for extra insurance. I'm using some of this Hypo cement. I'll show you where to apply this when we get to that point. You're going to need a couple of other things. Some beads. So the bead here in the center of our pendant is one of these really beautiful lentil beads. They come on a card. There's a couple of different sizes from this card, and plenty of leftovers, which is one of my favorite things about all of the strung beads that you can get from Michael's, is that there are usually so many that you have a lot left over. So even if you made a pair of earrings and used an extra one of these lentil beads, you would still have plenty of leftover beads to use as focals for other projects. The other kind of bead that you're going to need is a bead that I have in my stash all the time. And I order these in bulk from Michael's just so that I always have these on hand. These are just these little silver metal beads. The ones that I have here are 3 millimeter. You can get these in a couple of different millimeter sizes from Michael's. And I always, and I mean always, have these on hand. They are the perfect spacer bead or the perfect little accent. And that's the way we're going to use them today. We're going to use those as just little accents here on the bottom, just to add a little pop of metal sparkle, because we're covering up most of the metal on our component here. So I wanted to be sure that I did bring out a little bit of the metal. And so that's what these are going to be used for. But again, this is one of those things that if you asked me what one thing I have to have from Michaels that I have on hand all the time would be, it would be these. I always have these. I probably have like 6 of these just sitting over here to the side because I use them so frequently. So definitely a great thing to have in your stash. The other thing that I recommend, and I always have, is my Beadalon Findings Variety Pack. You can tell I've used a ton from this one. It's starting to get a little empty. I need to get another one. But it has 2 different kinds of clasps and several different sizes of jump rings in it. It's in this handy little pack that you can just open, get what you need, and then toss it to the side, or you can toss it in your bag. You know, if you like to do your beading on the go, this is definitely handy because you don't have to pick out all the things that you need. You got everything all in one place. And then we just need some tools. I've got the basic tools plus a pair of nylon jaw pliers for a knotted head pin that we're going to do here at the end, and some scissors. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You're going to need to cut about 6 feet of the B-Lon. 6 feet. I know that's a lot, but we use it up really, really quickly as we're making the knots. So 6 feet to get started, and you want to come to the end of that piece of B-Lon, and you want to come down about 4 inches, 5 inches, something like that. And then you want to fold it in half. So don't fold it in half at the center. Fold it in half at about the 4 or 5 inch mark from the end. Okay, so you've got one short strand and one really long strand. We want that short strand to be towards the top, so away from us, and the long strand to be closest to our body. Okay, and we want to create a lark's head knot onto our component, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So where I have folded that cord over has made a loop. I'm going to take that loop and I'm going to stick it through the center of our component, and then I'm going to kind of fold that loop to the back. And when I fold that loop to the back, I'm going to take my 2 ends of the cord and I'm going to pull them through that loop. You can use your fingers, you can use your pliers, whichever is the easiest for you, but you want to pull both ends of your cord through that loop. And when you cinch it down, this is what you've got, which is a lark's head knot. You've got the short end, remember, up at the top. That needs to be away from you towards the top of the component. And then the long end down here on the bottom, this is going to be our working thread. This is our tail. Okay, so now what we're going to do, since we cannot continue to make those loops all over the component, now that we have attached our cord, I'm going to show you how to do a lark's head knot just like this. It's going to look exactly like that, but we're going to do it with a single cord. So that knot has to happen in 2 steps. So remember, when we first got started, I said that it is very similar to a square knot. And what I mean is a square knot happens in 2 steps. This lark's head knot with a single cord also happens in 2 steps. You have to do 2 steps to make a full knot. If you don't, you're going to end up with a spiral. So when you are following along, or you come back to watch this on replay later, you want to be sure that you do both steps when you are going to create your knot. So let me show you how to do that. Okay. So we're going to take our working cord here, and we're basically going to create a half hitch knot. And we're going to use the component as our core, meaning this is what we are knotting onto. Okay, so we're going to take, and when I refer to the core, I mean the metal component. We're going to take our cord and we're going to create a P shape using the component as our core, or the stick of the P, and our cord as that loop of the P. Okay, and we're making sure that our B-Lon cord is going over the top of our component, or our core. Okay, so we make that P shape. Then we're going to take that cord, we're going to pull it through the center of our component, and then we want to bring it around behind the component and go up through that P shape that we made. Try not to get a knot in it. I've already gotten a knot in it. I'll have to take that out here in just a second. And then you're going to pull. That's step 1 of your knot. Okay, so that was over the top of the component. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're making a P shape again. This is the second step. So step 2, we're making the same P shape, but this time we're going behind the component. Okay, and then we're going to pull our cord up through the center of the component, and then we're going to go down through that P shape. And when we go down through that P shape and we pull, I need to take that knot out here in just a second. We'll do that together. I just wanted to be sure we did both steps of this right next to each other, and then pull. And when you pull, you can see you've got your full knot. Okay. And it looks like two little legs and a belt, right? You can see like there's two little legs and the belt holding the pants up. Two little legs and the belt holding the pants up. So you know that when you look at it up close, if you've got two little legs and a belt, you've completed the entire knot. You've done both steps. If you look at it and you only have part of that, it doesn't look like two pairs of legs and the belt, then you've only done the first step of the knot. You want to be sure that you follow through and do that second step. Now I'm going to come down here to the end of this cord where I have gotten a knot, and just undo that before we move forward. Okay. All right. So that's all there is to this. We're just going to repeat those steps. Okay. And we're going to fill up the entire component with these knots. So our goal for now is to make 20 knots on this side. We've already done 2, so we need to do 18 more knots. And I'm going to go slow with the first several of these so that you can be sure that you've got it all figured out. Okay. So again, we're making a P shape. Step 1, that P shape, the cord goes over the top of the component. We pull it through the center of the component just so that now it's towards the back. Okay. And then we want to take that cord and we're going to come up through the P shape that we made. And then we're going to pull. That's that first step. So we've got one leg, right? Then we're going to do the second step, that P shape, same direction and everything, but this time the cord is going behind the component. We come up through the center, and then we're going to go down through that P shape that we made. You can use your beading awl or your pliers if you need to grab a hold of your cord. And then when you pull it up, you'll see you've got your little legs in the belt, right? Okay, so we're just going to keep going. Always making sure that we do both sides, or both steps rather, of our knot. So P shape over the component, and then up through that P shape. And pull. This one goes behind the component for our P shape. And you can actually reach through with your fingers and pull instead of pulling through the component. It just really kind of is, it's up to you and how you feel most comfortable doing it. However, you can grab a hold of the cord, whatever's the easiest. And you'll get the swing, you'll get in the swing of things. Once you kind of get your rhythm, kind of figure out what movements with your fingers work the best for you and are going to work the fastest. Okay. So our P shape, and then I'm not even going to pull this cord all the way through. I'm just going to kind of push it to the back and then kind of pull it around to pull it up through. Saves just a little bit of time, right? And then pull. And then the same for the second step of that. So the P shape goes behind. Then I just take my fingers kind of through that loop, right? And I'm kind of pushing the cord up through the center of the component so that I can grab it and then pull. Does that make sense? So it's exactly what I was showing you. It's just that I've found kind of a quicker way instead of pulling the cord all the way through and all of that. So you just make the adjustments that you need to. I'll do it both ways so that you can see it both ways. And after you have, figured out how to do it, by pulling it all the way through, then maybe you'll step up to that next little movement. Okay. So making our P shape over the top of the core. Okay. And then pull the cord to the back. So pulling it all the way through, and then we're going up through that P shape that we made, right? And then we're going to pull. And then we're going to do the P shape with the cord going to the back. Pull it all the way through the front here. And then we just take it down through that P shape. Okay. And then pull. And you can see that process just takes a little bit. It's a little bit slower, but it's a really good way to learn how to do it. And then you can change it up and do it a little faster. Okay, so we're going to count our knots. And when we count our knots, we're going to count the belts. Remember, we've got 2 pairs of pant legs, and then we've got the belt going across. The belt going across is how you determine how many knots you've got. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we just finished 6. Remember, we're going to 20. Okay, so let's do some more. Okay, over the top of the component. Just kind of pushing it around through there to do it a little bit quicker. Pulling up through, pull. This time we're going behind. And we want to take that cord down through. So I kind of cheated with my movements, right? I just shortened it up. Okay, this time I'm going to do it the slow way. So there's our P shape. Pull the cord through to the back, right? And then we want to bring it up through that P shape. And pull. This time our P shape goes behind the component. Bring it through the front of the component. And then you want to go down through that P shape. And for whatever reason, for me, is the most challenging to grab a hold of. I'm not real sure why. And then pull. Okay. Again, we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We need 2 more so that we will have 10, and then we'll do 10 more. And then we're going to add some beads to this. Okay. So we're doing our P shape, taking that around the component and up through the P shape. All right, doing the quick way this time. And then behind the component. And then I kind of reach through to pull it down through. Pull out all the slack. Okay. Do again. So there's our P shape. Oops, my cord's getting caught on some of the things on the desk behind me here. And then our P shape to the back. Pull. And we should have 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we've got 10. I'm going to kind of squish them together a little bit because originally I had done 20 knots. And that seems like a lot, but I guess it was 20, and there is room for them. We are going to kind of come around this outer curve as well before we start adding some beads. So there should be enough room for 10 more knots. Okay, but if you find that you don't have enough, you can squeeze them in, or you can just change the number of the knots. It doesn't have to be exactly like mine. Okay. All right, so let's do 10 more. We're doing the P shape over the front of the component. Pull the cord to the back, and then up through our P shape and pull. The P shape with the cord going behind, and then down through. Pull. All right, now I'm going to speed up. Okay, so there was 1. I'm going to speed up to do the rest of these because we've got a lot more knots to go because we've got to do 20 on the other side as well. So I am going to speed this up a little bit, but don't forget, you can always come back to watch these Michael's classes on replay about 24 to 48 hours after the live. It gets uploaded to the Michael's YouTube channel, and you can watch it over and over again as many times as you want to. You can fast forward. You can mute me if you need to. I don't take offense to it. I'm not there. But you can if you must. You may turn the volume off and just watch my fingers. But yeah, if you ever need to see a technique again, don't forget that not just with the jewelry making classes, but with any of the Michaels classes, you can always go back and watch them on replay on the Michaels YouTube channel. So I definitely recommend subscribing if you haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. And if you'll click that little bell when you're over on YouTube, you can get notifications for when they upload videos, so you'll never miss a video, which is really convenient. You'll see you don't have to change the knot up at all. The component is going to change shape, whether it's this component or maybe something else that you're using. It may change shape on you. You don't have to adjust your knot in any way, which is nice, because we don't have to worry. We just keep doing the same thing that we're doing, and it's just going to follow the path of whatever we're knotting onto. So you don't have to make any allowances for curves or corners or anything like that. I think probably the biggest takeaway from this, other than the actual knot itself and the steps to complete the knot, is just remembering that you've got to do both steps of the knot. You can't do just one half of the knot. You're going to end up with a spiral, which is a great look. But if you're going for this look and you want to add the beads to it, you definitely want to be sure you're doing both. All right, let's stop and count for just a second, because I've done several and I don't even know where we are at this point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we need 3 more. Let's do those really quickly. So 3 more knots equals 6 steps altogether. Now, I know it might seem redundant, but I am going to recount these one more time after I finish this one, just to be sure, because sometimes, you know, when you're counting and you're looking through the iPad camera, you might miss one. So I do want to be sure that we count these at least one more time. And again, we count the belt, right? Not the little legs, we're counting the belts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 on the money. So we've got 20 knots. That's going to fill up both sides. So we're going to do 20 over here as well. But once you get to 20, we're ready to add some beads to this. So if you'll look at our sample here, what we do is, as we are creating our knot, we still have the little legs, right? The little pant legs and the belt. But in between each one, we've got a little bead that's placed. And we're going to do a total of 11 beads for this whole bottom section of our component. So I'm going to open up our beads here. Didn't open these ahead of time. Cut that off. And then I'm just going to dump out a few. Okay. All right. So when you do this part, before you start your knot, you just want to add a bead to the end of your cord. Slide that on, and you're going to drop that bead down to the surface of the component, and then you're just going to proceed with your knot just like nothing has happened. Okay, so nothing changes. That P shape over the top of the component, take the cord to the back and up through that P shape and pull. And when you do, it's just going to sit that little bead right out there on that outer edge of the component. And then take the cord and do our P shape, this time behind. And then we just take that cord down through that P shape and pull for that second step of the knot. And that just locks that little bead in place, and it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so we're just going to keep doing that. So there's one. We'll add another bead. Drop the bead down to the surface. And then proceed with our knots. So that P shape is going over the top of the component. Pull. The second half goes behind the component, down through, and pull. Locks that bead in place. We pick up another bead. Dropping that down. Okay, our P shape goes over the top of the component, behind and up through. Pull. Behind the component, down through, and pull. And again, with these, just like with the knots without the beads, if you need to kind of scooch them over, a little scooch, that's a technical term, right? Let's give it a little scooch to move it over so that you can make room for the next knot. Because what we want here is we want 5 of these beads on this outer edge and then 1 bead here in the center. So when we get to that 6th bead, we kind of want to center it up. And in order to do that, we might need to kind of scooch those over just a little bit. Right, so there's the first step for our 4th bead. Behind and down through. Okay, we're going to do 1 more bead and then we're going to do that center bead. Okay, so we're going to drop that down right next to the edge of the component, and we're just going to proceed as normal with our P shape. That cord's going over the top of the component. We're going behind, bringing the tail up through that P shape. Pull. This time the P shape, the cord behind, and we pull that cord down through and pull. All right, now we're set up so that our 6th bead is going to sit right there in the center where this component comes down to kind of a point here. It's a soft point, but it's a point in the center nonetheless. So we're going to thread on the bead. And do our knot. And yes, my P shape is really big on that one. It just goes to show it doesn't matter how big of a P shape you make, it all works out. So don't feel like you have to keep your P shape like really close to the component. You don't. And you can see how that 6th bead is going to sit right there in the center. All right, so we're going to do 5 more beads and then we are going to finish off with just the knots. So there are the 5 beads we have left. We're going to work these in and then we're going to go right back up the other side with the knots. And I'm going to go rather quickly going up the side because even after we get all of the knots on this, I need to show you how to finish this off and we need to make the dangle for the center. So I do want to kind of speed up just a little bit. Okay, but still the same steps. P shape over the top, core. Push that bead over there where it belongs. Don't let it wander too much on you. You don't want to get those beads in, you don't want to accidentally have them tied into your knot. All right. Okay, so our P shape over the top of the component, the cord goes behind and up through. The bead's trying to get away from me. Behind and then down through. And pull. This would look really pretty with beads all the way around the edge. And you don't have to use just these little silver beads. I love these little silver beads just because they're so versatile. You can use them in so many different ways. But you could use, you could use check glass beads for this. You could use faceted glass if you wanted to. You could use seed beads. Seed beads would look beautiful in a bunch of different colors. So you've got options. You don't just have to stick with these little silver beads. The only thing you want to be sure of is that the hole of your bead will be big enough to accommodate your B-Lon. And your B-Lon is not super thick, but with some of your gemstones and pearls, they are drilled with a really small hole. So you just want to double check. I think some little crystal bicones all along the edge would be really pretty if you wanted to make it a little more sparkly and less boho. Okay, we're going to add one more bead and then we're going to finish with just the knots up the side. Okay, drop that last bead down and our P shape over the top of the component. The cord goes around the back and up through. Make sure that bead goes back over there where it belongs. Pull. And then our P shape behind the component and then down through. Okay. All right. So we've added all of our little metal beads to our component, and then we're just going to fill up the side with our knots. So I'm going to actually hold this direction. It's kind of upside down and to the side. It just makes it easier for me to just continue working on the same side instead of trying to do my knots backwards over here, which you can do if you want to, but I mean, it's just as easy just to turn everything around and just keep working in the same direction. So all the same steps, we're just not adding beads this time. So our P shape across the top of the component, pull behind the component with our P shape, down through and pull. And I'm just going to fill this up. And you'll see, as long as I don't get my cord hung up on things that are behind me, which it keeps doing, that I do get into kind of a rhythm with this, and you will too. Once you've practiced this knot and gotten it down pat, you'll see that you'll work up a little rhythm with it and it will go fairly quickly. So I see some chat going on in the comments. Haven't seen many questions go by, and I try to keep up. If I missed a question, I apologize. Usually there is a wealth of information in the comment section. So if I don't see the question, somebody else sees it and knows the answer. They're always really quick to help out. We always have really talented jewelry makers here in the comment section, so I don't feel too bad about it. But I think there was some talk about some of the other kinds of things you can use to create these knots. B-Lon is definitely not your only material. That's not the only thing you can use to do this, either on a component like this or a different component, or just knotting in general. You can use bead stringing wire, believe it or not. I do recommend only using 49 strand. Just because it is the best for holding knots. I've not had very good luck with 19 or 7 strand when it comes to creating macrame, but 49 strand will make a really nice macrame knot for you. And you can also use wire. as in not bead stringing wire, but harder wire, either your artistic wires or your German style wires. It's a little bit more of a challenge just because it does have more structure to it. It's not very fluid, and it can be kind of challenging, but it makes a really interesting looking knot to use a harder wire. So you definitely can do that. I would recommend a thin gauge, maybe 24 gauge for something like this, maybe even 26 gauge if you struggle with it, but you definitely can use anything you want: leather, ribbon, cotton cording, hemp, which is always a standard when it comes to macrame. But you've got a ton of options, and you, of course, can make your own components. As far as components are concerned, I love to make my own components. I normally use 18 gauge German style wire because it's a medium temper wire. I don't have to work harden it nearly as much, but you can make your own components. You don't have to use a store-bought component. However, Michaels has a really great selection of pre-made components that you can cover with knots, wire wrapping, anything you want. So you have a lot of possibilities. We're almost there. Just a few more knots to go. Cool. And this one is behind, down through. Now the challenge you're going to have when you get here towards the end is, number one, trying not to accidentally tie a knot around the little loop here, and then trying to keep your tail cord kind of out of the way. You're also working in a smaller area, so, and it just gets smaller and smaller as you fill it up with knots. So you might slow down just a little when you get down here to the end. The steps are the same, just takes a little bit more patience, a little bit more time at this point. And if you feel like you need to go over the top of knots that already exist to make your P shape, that's okay. You just want to be sure that when you're pulling down, you know, that you're pulling down onto the metal, not onto knots that are already there. But that P shape, you can make it down here if you need to. Just as long as you're following the steps, it doesn't really make any difference where, as long as when you pull down, it's in the right spot. All right, looks like I've got room for one more knot, and it's in a very, very tight little space. All right, so now that I have created all the knots and I've covered up the entire component, I could go in and count and make sure that there's 20 here, and if I needed to add an extra one, I could. But I'm not gonna. I'm gonna leave it just like it is because I don't see any open spaces. There's no gapping here. It looks pretty good. I don't think that once you have this on, anybody is going to be that close that they're counting all of your knots. If they are, I mean, more power to them, I guess, but nobody's going to count your knots. Okay. All right. So what we need to do to finish this off is we're going to turn this over to what is going to be the back. And we're going to take our two ends here, and we just want to tie an overhanded knot with these. And we want to pull that knot down against the surface of the component and knot it again. Now remember, this is going to be on the back, so nobody's going to see it. Just pull the knot down as tight as you can get it right up against the surface of the component, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of Hypo cement to this. The Hypo cement, if you'll just let it kind of warm up in your hands, a little bead will start to form right there at the end. You just use that little bead of glue and go all around your knot. Don't have to squeeze it. Just let your hands warm it up. Just make sure you get all around that knot, okay? And you want to let that dry. Now, ideally, you want to let that dry about 12 hours. But we don't have that kind of time. So I want to let it dry down to tacky. And then I'm going to trim off the ends. So I'm going to let that dry down to tacky while we make ourselves our little dangle here for the center. Okay. And then we're just going to use a series of jump rings, you can see, to put all of this together. All right, so I'm going to take one of these lentil beads that's the same size as the one in the original. So not the big one, but the next size down, and tie my knot here. It's holding my beads on the cord. This guy right here. Okay, this is going to be our dangle. And we're going to create a knotted head pin for this. And this is one of my favorite techniques. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You absolutely can just use a standard head pin if you want. But if you don't have a head pin and you've got wire, use your wire. I'm going to use some 22 gauge German style wire for this. That's my go-to wire for just about everything. I prefer it over artistic wire just because it is a medium temper wire. But we're going to take the very tip of the wire. You only need about 4 inches. That might be a little bit much. 3 inches is plenty. You're going to take the tip of that wire and you're going to hold it in the tip of your round nose pliers. So the tip of the wire, tip of the pliers. And we're going to roll that wire around the very tip top of those pliers all the way around once. And then we're going to go a second time directly underneath that one. So we're making a coil of 2 loops around the top of our pliers, right? Now, before you take it off of the tool, bend it underneath those coils and out this direction. So if you're looking at it, the wire's running underneath the coils and away from the tool. Okay, so don't bend this way towards your hand, but away from you. We'll go ahead and take it off of the tool, and you can see you've got those 2 little coils there. We're going to take the tail end of the wire, we're going to bend it backwards, and we're going to stick it through those 2 coils that we made. It looks like a little lasso. Okay, you want to come in with your nylon jaw pliers. Please don't do this without a pair of nylon jaw pliers. They're worth their weight in gold, not just for this, but for everything else. But definitely a necessity for creating a knotted head pin. You got to hold on to that wire and you're going to pull that wire through the jaws of these pliers. If you use regular pliers for this, you're going to pull off that coating that's on the outside of your wire and it's going to tear it up and make it just really, really bad. So nylon jaw pliers here. And then another pair of pliers to grab onto that wire, and you're just going to pull. You're going to pull the length of that wire through the nylon jaw pliers, and ultimately you're tying a little knot that looks like a little rosette in the end of your wire. That is centered up, not off to the side. You've just made yourself a little head pin. Now, this is important if you don't have any head pins or you run out of head pins, or if you're using metal and your metals, you want all of your metals to match. For instance, when I use gold colored findings and components, a lot of times the gold is the hardest one to match up. It's very hard to find gold jump rings that match gold components. Sometimes they're more yellow, sometimes they're more white. So being able to create your own head pins and eye pins just means that all your metals are going to match each other. So it's a handy little trick to have. We're going to take our bead, we're going to drop that down, and it'll sit right there on that little head that we made. And now we're going to do a wrapped loop. So I'm going to come in with my chain nose pliers. I'm grabbing that wire right where it is exiting the bead, and I'm going to bend the wire over the top of the pliers. That allows for the pliers to go ahead and do measuring for me so that when I take the tool away, there's enough room here for the wraps. I don't have to pre-measure. And come in with my round nose pliers. So I'm going to take the wire up and over the top barrel of the pliers to make our loop, but I can't bring the wire all the way over because the bottom barrel of the pliers is in the way. So I need to just rotate and make this bottom barrel the top barrel, and that'll just get it out of the way. So I just go from here to here, and then I can take that wire over to the other side, and that's going to close up my loop, right? And then I'm just going to switch hands and I'm going to wrap in between the loop and the top of the bead. I've got room for about 4 wire wraps. I'm going to come in with my cutter tool and trim off the excess. So trim that off. And then if you need to come in with your pliers and tidy that up by squeezing in your end there, if it's sticking out, you can. Okay, so we've done a wrapped loop on our bead. And now we're ready to assemble everything. Let's come back here to where we were. Our glue has dried down to tacky. It's not dry completely, but it's dry enough for us to come in and trim off. And I'm just gonna cut my cords as close to that knot as possible. And if you feel like after you cut the cords, if you need to add a little bit more glue, you can. Just give it a good 12 hours before you wear it, right? Before it's rubbing up against your clothing. So again, that knot's on the back. You never even see it. It's nice and clean on the front. And then we just want to use a series of jump rings to hang our bead from the center. So you can see I've got a 6mm jump ring, either a 4 or a 5mm jump ring, a 6mm, and then another 6mm. The one that's on the top, this is for stringing. So if you wanted to add this to a piece of chain or whatever, you could. But these 3 jump rings are what is making like a little jump ring chain to hold our bead. And I got all of these out of my Findings Variety Pack. So I'm going to take one of those jump rings between 2 pairs of pliers. I'm just going to twist to open the jump ring, and I'm going to thread that on to the loop that we made. And then I'm going to thread on the smaller jump ring, close that back. And then I'm going to open up another 6mm jump ring here, open that up. I'm going to thread that on to the jump ring that we just added. And then I'm going to attach this to the ring on the component, or the little loop here on the component. Just thread that through, close that back. So that's attached. And you can see those jump rings gave it just enough space so that the bead hangs in the center. And then we're going to do one more jump ring, and this will be the one on the top. And you can then string this onto whatever you want to. You can turn this into whatever you need, or skip this jump ring and add an ear wire instead, right? And just make an earring out of it. But then you do have to make 2. Unless you're into that whole single earring thing that I see on the runways every season. I just keep waiting for it to go away. Oh, I mangled this jump ring. Let's take that one out. Single earrings is not great for us jewelry makers, right? We want you to buy 2 of our earrings, please and thank you. 2 jump rings will fit through this loop. It's just a matter of getting it in there without distorting the jump ring part. All right, there we go. Got it all together. And then we're ready to go. You're ready to add this to whatever you want to. All right. Make a great pair of earrings, pendants, right? You could do smaller components. You don't have to do anything large like this, but for a pendant, I could see this on like a really long piece of chain. I think that would be amazing. You could add different beads here instead of round beads. I meant to mention this before, but you could do teardrop beads that are top drilled, and they hang really beautifully in this kind of knot. So you could have like little teardrops hang in here. That would be a really cool accent. You can always wiggle a jump ring through and have dangles if you wanted to as well. So tons of options. I hope I've inspired you. I'm going to turn you guys around. We're going to look at this from another point of view, just so you can see sizing a little bit different, like in comparison to my big face or whatever. I don't know, but you do get another little perspective on how it looks. And then I will let you guys go for the day, right? So there you go. You can see our component, and it isn't too big for an earring. I mean, as long as you're into big earrings, it would make a great earring. I would wear it as an earring, but I really think it would be beautiful on just like a long, soft cord of some variety, and then layer it up with maybe some of your favorite pieces, or all by itself, right? I think it would be really pretty with like some flowy kind of boho chic, kind of beachy clothing, right? Oh, we all need some beachy clothing right now. I don't know where you are, but it is so hot here. So I'm all about the flowy. I need some flowy ruffles, and, you know, the wind blow a little bit because it's hot. All right, my friends, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Every time you guys join me for a class, I appreciate it more than you know. I hope that I have inspired you. I hope that I've taught you something. I hope that you are going to look at the pre-made components in a different way and hopefully play around with these knots. If you do and you post a picture of it, make sure that you use the hashtag Make It With Michaels, or you can use the hashtag Beadalon, or both, so that we can all see. And don't forget to check out some of the other amazing classes here at Michaels, and look forward to seeing you again with another fun class. You guys have a great rest of your week. Okay, bye.